Look, Lige, I want to thank you for filling in for Mayor Pro Tem. I tell you what, it's always a joy to get with you. And boy, we've had quite the time on budgets. We spent last night in our meeting probably the best part of the meeting, really talking about it. Let everybody talk about their position. The meeting the vote was 5-2.
Right.
You and Tom were the only dissenting votes, and I thought you did a nice job. In fact, why don't you go over it again? You were one of the early folks to talk, so I want to make sure that I didn't get lost. I'm sure it was recorded, but I think you're absolutely right in a lot of things you had to say, and not to say that others didn't have some meaningful points. And of course, the balance is always there. But let's just start with kind of your position on that.
Well, I guess first of all, Mayor, and thanks for having me. The budget, the difficulty we have in this budget right now is we have two different camps, one about a tax increase and another one with not having a property tax increase. But on top of that, coupled with that, is that we had to do a fee increase. There's no doubt on the utilities we had to do a fee.
We were not even covering our baseline expense, and look, that's been managed as well as any business out there, I think. I mean, I really do feel that way.
Right, and I agree, but that is one of the reasons I felt so strongly about not having a property tax increase, because that coupled with the fees is going to put undue burden on all of our citizens, every single person who pays a utility bill and pays property taxes, which is everybody.
Right.
And so...
and let me just... It's everybody. Even if I rent a property or even if I stay in an office building and the utilities are included, you're still paying for that gets passed through to everybody. And I think that gets lost in some of the conversation at some points. I just wanted to take time to underscore your point there. I mean, really, I think it matters.
And it does. And not only that, but when you go purchase something from a restaurant or from a store,
that's right,
the expenses go up, so they have to go up on the product. So the big piece about the property tax increase, I think, actually, I don't really want to speak for him, but I did speak to him or with him, is Councilman Harris. I think both he and I could have supported a 2-cent property tax increase, provided that it went to go refund our our fund balance.
Sure.
And available fund balance, but it was not going to do that, and it was going to go for some capital expenses, expenditures, which I believe that we should forego any new capital expenditures until we can get our fund balance back.
Sure.
So that, and then also we've had people with the public hearing the previous meeting, and then this past meeting, come up, and I thought Ms. Ruffin came and spoke, and I think she really hit home. This increase, she lives in Edgecombe County, side of Rocky Mount, is going to, she calculated it's going to be several weeks of grocery money that's going to have to go towards the increase in taxes and the fees. And, we have a lot of people in our community that it's going to impact like that. And, even on the way over here, I was thinking about someone that is working and making, say, $20 an hour, which is strong.
It is.
And then you take out for taxes, that's about a half a week's of wages. And that's not including the fees increase that is necessary for the utilities. So, we're fiduciaries of the expenditures and revenues in the city of Rocky Mount, but we also have to be cognizant of what our residents are having to do and the hardships that they have, because not only are things going up here, it's going up everywhere. Do we need to add to that? And I think we as a city need to tighten our belt and only spend money that's absolutely necessary for the operation of the city of Rocky Mount. And mainly that goes to public safety and our enterprise funds, which is our water and sewer and electric.
Right. So I want to underscore a couple of things that I don't think everybody fully appreciates or thinks about, right? So we're in 2 counties. I see it really as just literally one Rocky Mountain. We got one city limits. We are one community. We are divided by 2 counties. And rarely does that matter to me, except in this one instance. The tax rate per 100 in Edgecombe County is 89 cents. And the tax rate per 100 in Nash County is 63 cents. So there is a disparity in expense in living with Edgecombe County, and it's quite a bit of money. And and that has nothing to do with the city of Rocky Mount.
Right.
Nothing to do with the city of Rocky Mount, other than the county you happen to be in. And so when you look at we're layering on top of that, there is an increase and quite frankly, many of our communities in Edgecombe County are less fortunate than others in other parts of the city. And I mean, Nash County has, just as many challenges too, but within our city limits, it is a little bit more expensive to live in Edgecombe County. And I don't think anybody really fully appreciates that when we have these conversations. So I just wanted to agree with you, but I wanted to actually, we talk about the differences between counties in different ways, but we're also controlled to some degree. The expenses are certainly controlled by the folks who manage our county as well. Now, the good news is Nash County is 63 cents per hundred. We are currently 62 cents per hundred. So, it's almost identical.
Right. And I think added to that, to really add to what you're talking about, if you own a home, it's $200,000. The difference between a tax bill from what you pay in Nash County is going to actually be a little over $500 less than what you would pay in Edgecombe County.
Right.
That just kind of underscores what you're talking about, Mayor. And I completely agree with you. And it's also economic development that we have to worry with, because we need to have all the businesses that we possibly can get to locate in Edgecombe County to locate there. So it's a challenge, and like I said last night, it's unfortunate that, from my perspective, the choices that were made by the majority of the city council.
Sure.
And but we've got to make it work.
That's right. We're going to. I mean, that is our new reality. I will say that I have been an advocate of Manager Daniels' initial budget, and I've said that often and frequently. It called for no tax increases. It did call for the rate increases because we just have to. We just have to. We have a little fund balance there, but we all know, projected based on commodity pricing and other uncontrollables for us, that will be eliminated within 2 years.
Right.
And so we've at least got to get to the place we are funding, we're matching our expenses. But, it called for some deferrals of expenses. My concern is that we've been without a finance director for quite some time. I'm not suggesting that we have an inadequate staff or they're not capable, but I will say that we've not been at full staff, which I think means for me that we've not had the opportunity to really see hard data as fast as we'd like to be able to make good decisions driven by data. And so we're finally getting to the place we have a finance director coming, and I'm not even sure that the fund balance that we think we have is the fund balance that we do have. And so it just seems to me I don't want to go back and have to go back to the till again because we didn't quite get it right, because we didn't have the data. And so I was more of a proponent of taking a long study next year, make hard decisions, deep dives, do what we had to do. If it ended up being a tax increase, then so be it. But I'd just like to see us, take a more prudent approach than what we've done. But again, it is what we've done. It is where we are. I am the mayor. I'm a big cheerleader. I'm trying to pull people in. I want to see jobs come. I want to see everybody in the community be successful. And, the time to fight is on the front end. And on the back side of it, it's just we got to agree and move on.
I agree, man.
I know.
I'd like to say more, but it's not really worth.
Well, it doesn't really help anything going forward, right? I mean, it's as I like to say, maybe better served over alcohol. But anyway, you did a little chart. And I thought it was interesting. I do think we ought to talk about the impact that it's having, because when you start talking about 4 cents per hundred, what does that really mean to somebody? And I thought the numbers here really make a little sense, and I think it's interesting, and I think we ought to talk about it a little bit if you've got time.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here, man. I just base it off of various home prices.
Sure.
And I've already mentioned the 200,000, and then I did all the way up to maybe if a business located here for 10 million. But the difference between what we had going into last year, when we had the revals and the revenue neutral was going to be at 56 cents per hundred, we decided to go 2 cents above that to 58 cents. And then now we've gone an additional 4 cents. So essentially where we are from what was calculated as revenue neutral, we've got almost 11% increase in property tax.
Right.
And so, and what that has, let's go back to the $200,000 home. If you live in, Edgecombe County, that's going to be $3,000 a year, or $30,000 over a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take 10% of that,
Mm-hmm.
that's $3,000 extra coming out of your back pocket that
Right.
you're going to have to spend just for a $200,000 home. Now, we don't have. Well, we do have quite a few homes that are in the $300,000
Well, I
range.
mean, but that same number even in Nash County is $500 less too,
Right.
and that's a differential of the county, though.
Right.
I mean, I think that's important to underscore here, and it shows really a lack of or less economic development and investment in Edgecombe County. It doesn't have the same tax base nor the same population of
Right.
Nash County.
But even let's go to, let's say a business wants to locate
Sure.
here. And it's nothing for a business. In fact, on the low end is a capital investment, say $10
Right.
million.
Right.
That $10 million in property tax over 10 years would be $1.5 million in Edgecombe, but $1,250,000 in Nash. So a difference of over $250,000, and that's real money. And that's for every 10 million. And
Right.
you're a business person, and
Sure.
10 million is probably on the low side for a company coming in.
It can be. I mean, I know that a building. I mean, yeah, for sure. That could be very low.
So then if you go to, let's just say, a $50 million building, then you're looking at 2.6.
It's significant. And, one of the things I keep asking, because this has been a concern of mine
Right.
in the background, and is there any way that we can defer ad valorems? And apparently state law will not allow us to do that. It is a non-starter. You cannot do it for any reason, period, end of story. There are some things you can do with utilities, some things you can do with other things, apparently, but it does become a factor when you're looking at what is the capital that's going to hit the ground to create those types of jobs. And so, again, we are here. This is what we've got to manage through, and we'll be successful at it. But it does create a little bit of a headwind.
Right. Well, and to your point, you can't do rebates or anything, but you can do based off job creation.
Right.
And,
Right. And of course, that's a fluid number, right? So I think, I'm going to hire 200 people and then have a downturn in the economy. Well, I don't, end up only hiring 75, until the economy restores. That gets to be kind of slippery, and it's a little challenging. And, anyway.
The state of North Carolina faces that every day.
I know they do. I don't even know how they do. I got to tell you, I have looked at some grants like that and some of our, our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always nervous because I don't feel like I know what we're going to do. I mean, I know what I hope we do, but what are you going to actually do? I don't know.
Well, they have a clawback, and as you know, I served
Right.
on
Right.
under commerce for a board, and we based a lot of the grants on that, and they will go back and claw back the money.
Right.
But it is helpful. In fact, I think recently OIC just I think within the past couple of weeks received about $385,000 from the state.
I saw that.
And
Governor Stein came from his allocation, if you will, and so anyway, it'll be good. I mean, it does create jobs.
Right. It was actually on the board that I served on. Rural Infrastructure
Okay,
Authority.
got it. I'm sorry, I
So
didn't realize that.
under commerce.
And when I read it, the governor had got credit for it, so maybe unfoundedly so.
Well, the governor gets credit for everything, but that board is evenly split between Speaker of the House and
the governor,
and the Senate.
Okay, got it.
Pro tem. So,
Okay, got it.
But anyway, but yeah, we increased as a majority increased the fees on utilities, and
Well, we had to do that. That was just there was just no other choice.
but we're still competitive.
We are very competitive. We are in the
so-
middle of the stack, and I thought that
Right.
I thought we demonstrated that very well. I think people are still stuck on the day when we were among the most expensive, apparently, in the world. But we're not. We're just not. Even now, we are very competitive with those in our area. I think one of the challenges maybe that we send all of our bills out, every single one of them, wastewater, sewer, electrical, all comes in one bill, and it still looks like a big number because it is a big number.
Right.
Versus if you sent that out one at a time, it would feel a little different. It would feel a lot different.
Right. You're exactly right, Mayor. I mean, some municipalities, they might not have anything but trash service,
Right.
and then the person receives something from Duke Energy
Right.
or one of the co-ops, and it's separate and it's itemized, and so it's hard. You know, I'm guilty as
Right.
charged. I look at that total at the bottom, and I'm
Right.
like, oh man.
That's it. I know. Look, I mean, I don't like paying it, but I don't do without it either. So there's your choice, right?
Especially,
and as TJ pointed out last time, I want my trash, I want my police, I want all these things for sure.
And Mayor, as we sit here today at 4:30 on a hot afternoon, it's 100 plus heat index out there. We want our air
You
conditioning.
know what? This would be a much quicker show if we didn't have it.
Might not be a show.
Might not be. Might not be. Canceled for inclement weather. But anyway, consent agenda was really mostly just a bunch of items, grants, things that we were applying for. I think there's some opportunities that are buried in there that are going to be good for us. I think the other thing that really took a lot of time in discussion, or maybe not a lot of time, but at least came up as discussion, really related to this notion of eminent domain.
Right.
We had at least one speaker, if not two, come forward during the public hearing portion, not public hearing, during the, what do you call that? I guess.
Comment by the public.
There you
public
go.
comment.
There you go. Public comment about eminent domain. And I can say this with absolute certainty, and I can say this, I believe, on behalf of everybody on council, without exception. Nobody on our council likes eminent domain. I mean, there may be different reasons that people are opposed to it, but at the end of the day, nobody wants to pull the trigger on eminent domain if they can all help it. And so this was something that has been discussed ad nauseum for the better part of 2 years, certainly 18 months.
Right.
Certainly 18 months. And it just has gotten to a place that we have to move forward in this approach, and so that's what we've done.
Right.
So, I just want people to hear that, because we have a lot of those discussions in closed session, because it has a lot to do with economic development or issues that would allow us to have a closed session. And so it's not one of those things that anybody necessarily hears about, and then it just shows up on an
Right.
agenda, and it does look funny. I get that. But that's something that I think we avoid at all costs. In fact, we took it off
Right.
of the last agenda to try to give it one more chance, one more opportunity to try to, resolve this in a different manner, but obviously not able to make that happen.
I agree with everything you said, and that echoes, what Councilman Blackwell he mentioned the same thing. We
Right.
at all costs. So I would agree with you 100%.
Yeah, very few things I say I can talk for everybody on council for. Very few things. This just happens to be one of them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor.
That and we love Rocky Mount. That's the other thing I gotta say
yeah.
for everybody.
Right. No, I 100% agree.
So beyond that, it was a fairly quick meeting. We went through the budget, obviously. We did talk about various budget ordinance amendments, and that really was about trying to make sure we got the right expenses in the right buckets, and we were able to match that with the right expenses so that we balance our budget. That is a requirement from the LGC,
Right.
from the state of North Carolina, is that we have a balanced budget, and we have to have the money to be able to pay for it. And if you don't have, which I don't think this is what came up, it was alluded to, if you don't have at least 8%, which works out to be 1 month's worth of cash, then the LGC has a real problem with that.
Right.
And so as a result of that, we've got to make sure we have 8%. Our internal policy is 10%.
Which from personally for me,
Yeah.
my perspective, that's 10% low. I think we need to get more in the 40 to 50% range.
Well, I prefer it. I mean, look, a good hurricane, you're not able to collect. I mean, I know there's usually federal assistance and state assistance, but most people watching us and listening to us today remember Hurricane Floyd. I mean, we talk about it like it was yesterday, but it's been now, 26 years?
Yes.
But it was so devastating to everybody. And, just imagine if that were to happen again. If you don't have some significant reserves, you don't have many options.
Right. Well, look at our friends to the west.
Sure.
And
I still feel for them. I mean, it's a tough place to be.
Right. And it could happen tomorrow. And so we need it. I think we all agree we need to refill that the coffers. But I also think that where the disagreement or maybe the debate would come in is on the percentage.
Sure.
And I tend to be a little more conservative when it comes to that. And
well, I think you might even be a little more conservative than me on some things of that nature, but I don't think that's ever wrong, right? I mean, rarely do you go wrong with that. And look, I think where I get scared is when there's an absence of a concrete plan or direction in which you're spending money. It's one thing to raise it. It's one thing to say, hey, look, you know what, we're going to have to increase taxes, but what we're going to try to do is we're going to be able to raise our revenues by virtue of we're building new sewer lines or water lines. This is hypothetical, and that's going to give us more housing. More housing is going to give us more ad valorem. They're going to be buying utilities, and we're going to be able to reinvest that in more infrastructure to create a bigger, better city of Rocky Mount.
Right.
And we may end up doing that, but it's just unclear what we're doing with the funds today other than we want to do something. And so I think that makes people very nervous as well.
Right.
So that's just, and I probably need to quit beating that drum. I think I beat it enough, but that's exactly where we are.
Yeah.
So anyway, what other things came to your mind? What was your take home from the meeting yesterday?
Well, I think there's obviously differences of opinion.
Sure.
I think one comment that was made during our budget session and it was actually talking about our road system, and how we want to keep investing in our road system. And I'm a critic of the city of Rocky Mount when it comes to that, because we have what's called Powell money that we receive from the state of North Carolina. And I don't know the exact figure, but it's about 1.2 to 1.6
on the relative scale to our needs.
Yeah, right. And that's all we put into resurfacing our roads.
Right.
And I think we need to put more money towards that infrastructure, which includes the roads. You can ride it down any street in the city of Rocky Mount, and I don't care if it's on the Edgecombe or Nash side of Rocky Mount, it needs to be resurfaced. And unfortunately, we have not invested enough money in that where we have to do what's called reclamation, where they have to totally scrape up the whole street, and that is expensive. And so right now, since we don't put enough into resurfacing, we can only do it approximately every 2 years because our contract wouldn't be big enough for a contractor to come in here and bring all the equipment. So I say this, Mayor, because I think we need to allocate more money towards our road resurfacing. And unfortunately, it's going to cost us more because we have not done what needs to be needed to resurface our roads. And so it's going to cost us even more. And I think at some point, we're going to have a serious discussion about either the taxes towards that or even a bond of some sort to pay for that. And we need to make sure we're addressing our infrastructure, all our and not just the pipes and the roads, but the buildings that we currently own. Take a look at our Imperial Center, the roof. And the HVAC on that, it's costing us a lot right now.
Well, and we've been fortunate enough to get some state grants and monies to be able to make that happen, but otherwise we wouldn't be able to afford it. Look, you're absolutely right, but it's not only that. I mean, how do you grow a community without that infrastructure? So you've got the aging infrastructure, and then you have to build new infrastructure. I think when we were talking about the CIP, if I'm not mistaken, I'm working off memory here, but we had like 49 years out of 75 that are used, and we've just now begun to tip the scale on the inside of 50% of the life left. And so that means we're going to have to address that sooner than later. And it may look like a bond, I don't know, but but I don't even know what we need. I mean, I really don't have an idea, although I drive the same roads you do, and I want to point out there's a difference between state roads and city roads, and so the state and federal roads, and we have all of them in Rocky Mount. So, but anyway, it is something we obviously need to be focused on, and we haven't even touched on the CIP. I don't think we really allocated a whole lot of funding for anything in the CIP this year. We've got items on the list, but we're going to have to cross and deal with that at some point soon enough too. Right.
Completely agree.
So anyway, I think we have a couple of minutes here left. We did give out some forgivable loans. I want to talk about that too, because it seems odd that it would be on the same agenda that we're fighting over a budget and whatnot. I did do the math. I mean, these are roughly $50,000 loans. If these entities stay in place for 10 years, then that money is recouped. There is a clawback for these loans too. It is to incentivize people to create some jobs. They're also buying our utilities. They're also paying ad valorem, or it's creating an increase in value. And so, and I haven't need to factor any of that into my math. So
Right.
we're going to look at 10 years. But I'm happy. I'm hopeful that we have some more restaurants. I hope people come downtown, try to support them. I know that I'm here downtown, and I've enjoyed having some restaurants downtown. I really have.
Yeah. Well, we certainly need to incentivize businesses to open up downtown. Hopefully with that we'll have businesses just wanting to
Right.
locate, and we won't have to
Right.
provide any incentives for that. But no, that's exciting. We also had some demolition
We did.
grants that or just demolition that the city's going to do, and that's another thing that we probably need to do a little more of. But that's, again, it requires
Right.
money, and
It does. Now, on the upside, what I'll say is this past weekend was Juneteenth. I did have an opportunity to read our proclamation on Sunday for the gospel sing, which is actually one of my favorite things that we do as part of that particular event. And so I was telling somebody, I said, look, maybe just maybe we ought to try to jazz that up, get a larger audience. Maybe we can begin to charge at least some admission for maybe some of the premium concerts or whatever, and try to drive some heads and beds here in our local community, try to generate some tax dollars out of it. But anyway, something I would like to explore. It feels like we have a little bit of wind in our sail,
right.
and perhaps there's an opportunity there.
Right. Well, based on what you've said, and then also what City Manager Daniel said,
Right.
I think the attendance was estimated to be around 8,000. He said
Over the 4 days,
4
I think
days.
it was, and
Yeah.
and I'd like some hardcore numbers on that, because we estimate when it comes to the Down East Classic, we estimate on the
Right.
pig cook-off barbecue. I don't know how you get a real head count, but whenever somebody tells me we estimate, it just makes me nervous,
Yeah. Well, I know we have some of the drones.
Yeah. Well, and there were a goodly number of people. There's no question about that based on the pictures. I'm not suggesting that's false information.
No, I agree. But I think with technology, you can
Yeah.
certainly do that. And,
Yeah.
and I'm with you.
Yeah.
Give me the hard numbers.
That's it. Well, look, thank you so much. I hope you have a great week, and thank you for all you do for the city of Rocky Mountain.
And likewise, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.